Motherhood. 1 minute, you're Mom of the Year.
I love you, Mommy.
Then the next, not so much. From bath time to bullying, from potty training to puberty, parenting is full of challenges. But one thing is for certain, you are not alone. Welcome to Modern Mom Probs. I'm your host, author, mother, parenting expert, Tara Clark. Join me while we tackle today's modern mom problems. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Modern Mom Probs, where we're trying to solve the world's modern mom problems. And if we can't do that, hey, at least we're having fun talking about it. And today we're having a lot of fun talking about a lot of different things. I am joined by Renee Reina from the Mom Room. If you listen to her podcast, you know she is hilarious and she is smart and she is funny. And Renee and I have a really good time talking about all things from default parenting to traditional roles at home to what shows we're watching lately. This is a great conversation, and I think you're going to have fun. So, Renee, you may notice I have a different setup. See, look at this. Right? Got my mic and everything like that because...
Who influenced you?
I was going to say this extraordinarily talented podcaster who I happened to speak to a week ago today was like, hey, you know what? Maybe you could get a new setup. And I was like, done. And then within 48 hours, I had a new setup. And I am so much more comfortable. Yes. I'm lounging on the couch. Yes. I'm chilling. I'm talking. Hopefully my editor will be like, yeah, this still works. So Bobby, we'll see how it goes.
It
Bobby's
sounds good.
Editor. Does it? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I could even go closer. I don't know. We'll do all the things.
You can move it wherever you want. That's the beauty of it. When you're using a mic stand that's on a desk, then you're having to be right at that mic stand. Whereas if you can move it around, then it comes to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what it is? My whole life, I feel like that's an analogy for life.
Yeah.
Because my whole life, I've always made myself fit to the situation and not have the situation fit to me. Does that make sense?
There you go.
I feel like there are different personalities in life. I'll give you an example. My mother-in-law will move into a house or go into a space and say, oh, let's knock down this wall. Let's rearrange that and then do this and do that. And then my father-in-law is like, yeah, sure. And then they do it. I've never once gone to a place and said, oh, we could make changes here. I'm just the type of person who'll be like, let's just paint and everything's cool.
Yeah. I'm the person that's like, I have all the changes in my mind, but it will take several years for those things to actually happen. Like this house, we bought it knowing that it's not functional and we would want to make changes to it. And then a couple weeks ago, I was talking to my mom and I was like, you know what? I think I want to get a new dining room table. Like I want to get a round dining room table. I'm just really into round tables lately. And she's like, Renee, never mind your stupid dining room table. Like you know you have to make like actual changes to the house, like put in storage and like built-in units. She's like, why don't you do that instead of wasting money on a round dining room table that's not going to change anything? I'm like, good point. Good point.
See, it's good to have moms around that are helpful in that sense.
Yeah, to call you out and be like, you don't need a table. You need storage.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I'm actually that way with my mom. My mom would be like, I need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, you don't need to do any of those X, Y, and Z things. You need to do A, B, and C. So get on top of A, B, and C first.
Yeah, priorities.
Yeah. So I'm so excited to have you on the show. I was on your show last week and we had so much fun. I was like, we have to keep this conversation going. And so now here we are. So shout out to that episode. You have to listen to it on the Mom Room. So let's just do a quick introduction. Renee, can you tell everyone who you are, how you got started, what motivates you, all those things?
Okay. So I am actually an academic person. Here's how my life went. I was like an athlete for the longest time. And then when I was no longer an athlete, I was like, okay, I'm going to put all that energy into academics. And then I became like this turbo nerd academic person. So I ended up doing grad school. I did a master's in psychology, a PhD in psychology. And at the end of my PhD program is when we got married, we had a child, and I took like a year off mat leave. And then he started daycare I finished up my PhD, and like 3 days before quarantine started, remember COVID days? That was
Oh, I sure
special.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. So 3 days before the world basically shut down, I was in Ottawa defending my dissertation, finishing my PhD. And I had no intention of like doing social media or starting a podcast. Like, never in my life was that even an option or something that I was looking towards. In my mind, I was like, going to be a professor or work at a big research institute, something like that. But then in quarantine, my husband's a physician, so he was working his regular job. And I was at home with Milo, who at the time was 18 months old. Difficult time.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember downloading TikTok in February or something of that year and playing around with it. And then in quarantine, I decided everything that was a struggle, I would make it into a funny TikTok. So whatever it was, like you go to the park and you're all excited to go. And then you get to the park and you're like, oh my God, like, can we leave? Like, this is terrible. Just like following your child around, like making sure they don't get hurt. So I would turn all of these situations in quarantine into TikToks. And then that's just kind of what started it. And then everything that I would talk about on TikTok that would do really well, I was like, I want to have a full conversation about these topics like default parenting, all, these kind of really abstract, generalized topics. So then I started the podcast to be able to have full on conversations about these things. And that was in 2020. And now it's like October 2024. And this has just become my full-time job.
It's amazing. It's bananas how that
Yeah.
evolved, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And people are always like, so you're just not using your PhD? I'm like, I do. Like, I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't have all that training behind me. But yeah, like I would never give up this opportunity to have such a flexible job, be able to do something that I enjoy so much. And also, because of the kind of content that I make, it like involves my family at the same time, which is really nice. So yeah, it's just like the coolest thing.
It is the coolest thing. And you're so good at doing it too.
Oh,
which is why
you.
obviously, yeah, of course, which is why obviously it took off the way that it did. You said something that made me think, well, you said many things that made me think, but one thing in particular, during the pandemic, obviously there was the explosion of TikTok, the explosion of conversations that I feel like hadn't necessarily been having. For example, the conversation of the default parent and the mental load of motherhood, I feel like didn't have a name per se until the pandemic. And maybe I'm wrong, but I've been doing this a long time because I was on social media doing parenting truths 4 years before the pandemic hit, right? That was not a conversation that we were having until the pandemic happened because it became so glaringly obvious who was shouldering most of the work.
Yeah, I know. And I never experienced those things or was able to put it into words until quarantine. Because I feel like quarantine was a very heightened and exaggerated example of what being a stay-at-home mom feels like, for me anyways, because when I was on my 1-year maternity leave after he was born, and it was newborn days, it was so different because that was all I was thinking of. Like, I mentally prepared to be like, for this next year, my husband's working. I am fully like dedicated. Like, this is all I'm doing. I have no other responsibilities, like nothing else going on. And my husband is also like really, really hands-on. We work really well as a team. So it never was a thing during that year. And then he was in daycare and I was doing my stuff during the day, finishing up school. Again, my husband, super supportive, like no issues there. And then when quarantine happened, and now I was home 24/7, not able to go to play groups, not able to see friends, not able to see family. and you're literally just at home. It's like Groundhog's Day, like over and over and over. I started to pick up on things. Obviously, like my mentality changed. And then I started to talk about those experiences on TikTok. Like, why am I pissed off when my husband gets home from work when I've wanted him to come home all day? And I would sit there and think about it. And this is probably my psych background, like trying to understand why I feel that way. And like, what is it about the situation that is making me feel that way? And it's like, oh, because when he comes home from work, I'm expecting him to do XYZ. That's my hope in my mind of how that's going to play out. But when he gets home, he's doing ABC. Like he's going to do the dishes and then he's starting to prep dinner, and all these things on paper look amazing. And people are like, oh my God, your husband is amazing. But like in that moment, that's not what I wanted. That's not what I expected. That's not what I needed to happen. And so we would have a conversation like, when you come home, can you just come and sit with us for 15, 20 minutes? Like just come wherever we are, sit with us, and then you and I can then discuss like how our days were, who wants to make dinner. Maybe I want to go make dinner because I have been on top of Milo all day. I would like a break from what I've been doing all day. And then the same kind of situation would play out Saturday morning. I was like so looking forward to the weekend because Pri is home. And then he starts making a big pancake breakfast. And like my TikTok about this, the frickin' pancakes, like broke the internet. Because people were horrified. Like, this poor man is just trying to make breakfast for his family.
And I was like, bee wife won't let him.
Exactly. And I was like, that is not the point, people. Like, the point is Milo could have toast or cereal for breakfast. And then I get to have coffee with my husband and have a conversation with an adult. And when it's Saturday morning and you have been the stay-at-home like caretaker the entire week, and then your partner who has been working outside the home all week gets to go cut the grass, gets to go put gas in the car, wash the car, starts doing laundry in the basement. Like, sure, you're being productive, but now I'm stuck doing what I've been doing all week. Maybe I want to go do something. And so all these things happened only in quarantine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's when it really became very apparent.
Oh, yeah.
Like blazingly, glaringly apparent.
Yeah.
And you know what the interesting thing is? You're not alone in that. Mm-hmm. Thousands, millions of women were saying, yes, Renee, yes, I too feel this way. And even as you're saying this here, like I'm nodding along being like, yes, I can relate to that. My husband is super supportive and we are a great team and we divide and conquer. But you're right. Sometimes, he'll go and make dinner and I'm like, oh, I kind of wanted to make dinner. Because you wanted to be able to step away. Or maybe you just think that you make that one dish better than he makes that dish. Or, whatever it is. It's like sometimes, I guess maybe that warrants a conversation as opposed to just kind of like sitting in that. But let me ask you a question. Does your husband clean up after he cooks? Or does he leave that for you?
No, he's very, very good. He's an only child. He was in medical school for so long. Then he did residency. Like he was living by himself. Like he is like laundry, dishes, like he does everything.
That's awesome.
Because he had to for like over 10 years. He was living by himself. He didn't have someone doing those things for him. And his love language, we just had this conversation not too long ago, is acts of service and gifts. So he is like on the ball when it comes to things like that. Now, there are things that drive me nuts that he does or he doesn't do, but it's all like small things. And there's things that I do that drive him nuts because what is a priority for me and what bothers me is not the same as what is a priority for him and what bothers him. Like he can't stand when I leave dishes in the sink, like for some reason. And his dad is the exact same way. I'm like, is this genetic? Like can't have dishes in the sink. And
I'm the same way.
always be at the sink, like doing dishes. And I'm like, okay, like I'll, let them build up a little bit and then I'll do all of them or put them all away or whatever. But no, that's his thing. But I come downstairs in the morning and there's like a can of like bubbly or something on the counter. Instead of like putting it away in the recycling, like he'll put it on the counter. That drives me crazy.
Yeah.
When he puts on his shoes in the morning to go to work, he pulls out a chair from the dining room table, sits on it, puts his shoes on, like gets his stuff ready, and the chair will stay there, like out in the middle of the room. Like he does not put it back. And I'm like, oh my God, it drives me crazy. But then I do things that drive him crazy.
What? Okay, give me an example.
So me, it's the dishes. It's also recycling. If there's recycling or, I empty out the garbages and I have a garbage bag, like I'm just tossing that in the garage. Like I'm not going into the garage to put it in the garbage bin. Like, no, sirree, Bob, like not happening. So that drives him crazy because I just like toss stuff in the garage.
Oh my gosh, so funny you say that. When I have boxes, like Amazon boxes, I'll just like stand at the door and just like literally hurl them into
like Olympic shot put, just like woof in the garage.
Oof, that's it. That is all the time. So yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah. And it's funny because I know that drives him crazy. And sometimes I'll put forth the effort to, do it properly. But you just do it. You're just like, oh yeah, okay. I'm just going to toss this in there. Like that's his thing. Like he'll go organize that.
He's the recycling guy. He'll take care of that.
Guy. Yeah.
How did you work out such a good system together, the two of you?
Oh my gosh. I think we focus on different things and it kind of adds up to then everything getting done. But I think because he is so hands-on and very, like, if he'll be like, oh, do you want me to, like, he's constantly going to the grocery store. So, and that's something his dad does too. Like, I swear, they just like enjoy certain things.
You know what it is then? He had really good modeling coming from his
Oh, 1,000%. So I will say he is from South Africa and they moved to Canada when he was about 8 years old. His mom got like a high up position in one of the hospitals and his dad moved here and then was the sole caretaker of Pre for a while, because they came over to Canada for his mom's job.
Mm-hmm.
So before his dad then started working, like he was the one taking care of Pre. And then his mom is like super badass. And so he's had those things modeled for him growing up. So yeah, he doesn't come from like a traditional family where it's like the mom stayed home and yeah, and it shows. Yeah.
It obviously shows. No, I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. It definitely shows. 1, 2, it's great modeling for Milo. 3, you don't realize how hard it is to be married to somebody who did grow up in a very traditional sense and then to sort of, and I'm used for lack of a better term, break them of that, to sort of peel back their eyes to show them what it can be or it should be. And so consider yourself lucky. My husband grew up in a very traditional Italian-American family with a mom and a dad and 2 sons. And my husband is the older of 2 sons. And the mom, cooked everything, cleaned everything, super, super traditional in that sense, to the point where on holidays, the men always stay at the table and sit, and the women clean the dishes and take everything away, is what you would imagine. Now, for me, my parents were divorced. So my mom raised me. She was a single mother. And so she worked a ton, like 120 hours a week. Talk about badass. She was an absolute badass. But again, she was not traditional in that sense. I did, because I was an only child and it was just she and I did all of the housework. I was the domestic one at home with her. And so she was like the provider and I was the domestic one. And that worked out well. That was just, what our arrangement was. My dad, on the other hand, he actually, not that I would call him domestic per se, but like he's an excellent cook. He was like fastidious in his appearance. Always his clothes were always ironed. He always like had everything together. So he is very neat too, because he always lived by himself as well. And so I did not grow up in that traditional standpoint. My grandparents on both sides were traditional, but again, those are grandparents, so I didn't necessarily think much of it. But my immediate parents, like, they were not traditional. So I got married to my husband into this very traditional family setting. And I was like, oh, I'm expected to, I got to clean all the dishes now. Oh, the women have to be in the kitchen and then the men have to be out in the living room and all of that kind of stuff. And so it took a while, I feel like, to I don't want to say teach my husband, because that's not the right way. Bring awareness, let's say, to bring awareness of that situation. And like I said, now my husband is great. But even when my in-laws come over, there's the concept that you have to like run and grab them a cup of coffee and all of that kind of stuff. So consider yourself lucky, Renee, because I think that's awesome.
Interesting, because when you were talking, like, I realized I grew up in a very, like, all of my extended family, my like immediate family, super traditional. Like, my mom stayed home. My dad worked, when we were younger, he was working on and off, like, out of the country. So away a lot of the time. So my mom was doing everything. I don't think I've ever seen my dad vacuum in my life. I've never seen him like wash dishes, like nothing. And same, it reminded me of when we would have family gatherings, exact same thing. Like, the women are doing all the cooking, they're doing all the cleaning up, all the everything. Like, that is so how I grew up and what I was exposed to. But for some reason, I wasn't raised that way. Like, I have zero feelings that I have to behave in that way. Like, and my family knows that, if I'm hosting a dinner, it's like we're getting it catered. Like, I'm not cooking. Like, yeah. I did not pick up any of this lifestyle at all. And it was like, I stayed in school forever. So I was in school till like I had Milo and then I finished school. Like, I was in school until I was 34, 35 years old.
Wow.
In grad school.
Right,
so like,
right.
My focus was just academics. I was not cooking. I was not cleaning, cleaning my little apartment. Yeah. But it was just totally different. My focus was always on myself, if that makes sense. Whereas my mom had 3 kids by the time she was like 25 or something.
Wow. You know? Yeah. No,
totally different.
Totally different lifestyle. Night and day lifestyle. Yes, I think my mom had me when she was just about to turn 25. So yeah, it's a similar thing to think that now here we are having kids. Jack was born when I was 32.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a similar kind of thing. It's wild. Are your siblings, and I'm going to use this in quotes, domestic?
My brother, no. Like, my brother and my sister-in-law they're not having children. They live in a condo right in downtown Vancouver. Like, she's a professional photographer. Like they're just like cool, you know?
Yeah, that's how my brother, so I'm an only child, but my husband has one brother, and that's how his brother and wife are as well. Same thing.
Yeah.
They're just cool. They travel a lot.
And my brother's older than me. He's 5 years older than me. My sister is 4 years younger than me and much more, like, she's like into making sourdough, and she's staying home right now with my niece, who is 2 years old. So very different from my situation, I guess.
Right. I mean, I guess the thing is this. Everyone's situation is different and everyone's journey is different, right? Like, and I know that you love being a mom. And I love being a mom, but being a mom doesn't necessarily mean one size fits all.
Yeah. No, there's a million different ways to do it and do it well. And yeah, there's no like right or wrong way to do it.
No, it's true. So I ask this question usually at the end of the conversation, but I'm going to start to now ask my guests this in the beginning. And so I still count this sort of as in the beginning. What do you, Renee, think is the biggest modern mom problem out there today?
Today, I think one of the biggest issues that I think snowballs into other issues is that moms lack confidence. And there's so many reasons why we do lack confidence. But I feel like that is where a lot of these issues start from. Is like I think moms judge other moms and shame other moms because they are insecure themselves. And it's like you're trying to not put somebody else down, but you're trying to be like, what I'm doing is the best. And so what they're doing is less than. And yeah, I just feel like a lot of the issues come from a lack of confidence. And it's nobody's fault. It's like the culture of parenting right now and with social media and with everything is just like a breeding ground for being insecure about parenting and about motherhood and being a woman in general, I guess.
All of those things. I mean, it's so much to unpack. Because, part of it is wonderful that we have all of this information at our fingertips. And then part of it is terrible that we have all of this information at our fingertips because it causes us second guessing. We feel bad about ourselves. I think back to when I was trying to nurse my son in the very beginning when he was a newborn. And I struggled and I struggled and I struggled. And then I was like pumping into bottles because I was worried that he wasn't getting enough milk. And then finally he did end up nursing naturally. Then he ended up being like an extended nurser. It's like a whole story, but that's a story for another time. But I remember feeling so terrible because I felt like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's so freaking hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is hard, but it got easier for me. And then, for some people, it never gets easier. And they just simply say, forget about this. And there was a time where my son was nursing and being like, I was pumping into bottles and he was on formula. He was getting like milk, like any which way he could at that point. I literally did every single thing that I could to feed my baby at that point. And that's why I genuinely say fed is best. Right?
Yeah.
But there's so many messages, so many conflicting messages.
My husband still says that. I'll be like stressed about Milo's, like he had pizza 3 times this week or like something like that. My husband's like, babe, fed is best. Okay. I'm like, okay. Like our child is 6.
Yes.
But just the other day on the Mom Room account, I put up this reel because I always have so many questions because that's just, I guess it's like the academic background in me. Like you hear something and I'm like, well, what about this? Like, what about this? And we had a really rough night with Milo a few nights ago, which is like very rare for us. And we had him go to his room. He wouldn't stop. It all started with, we made lasagna for dinner. And because I'm a little bit stressed about him being a picky eater, I was like, okay, lasagna, he has never really had it before, but like it's noodles and red sauce and cheese.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of these things you eat and you like. So lasagna, like you're going to eat it. And then you feel guilty about like, you shouldn't be forcing your kids to eat something. And I'm like, oh my God, like I just can't. But
yes,
I was like, this is what's for dinner. And if you're not going to eat this, basically like there's no snacks before bed. Okay. Like you have to eat this. It's these 3 things. I know you like these things, whatever. And he was like, I'm not eating it. So he took like one little tiny bite of a noodle and he was like, it's disgusting. I'm like, oh my God, you're such a liar.
Story of my life. You're preaching to the choir here, Renee. You're preaching to the choir.
So then that's what started it. And then he was like in a mood and I don't remember what he was saying. He was saying something like repeatedly. I think it was like, I don't want to eat that or it's disgusting or something like that. And we were like, okay, like that's fine. You don't have to eat it. And we're so calm, so whatever. And he wouldn't stop. And we're like, can you stop saying that? And he wouldn't. He just like saying, I'm like, Milo, if you keep saying that over and over, like you're going to have to go to your room. And so we brought him to his room. And at first it was like a little bit of a struggle. And then he was just in his room and it was fine. Then I go in and I'm all calm and I'm like, it's bath time. Like, mommy's going to make your bath. Like, come have a bath. Refused to have a bath. And I'm like, okay, you're going to stay in your room then. Okay. And he ended up staying in his room. But then I was like, I know people are against timeouts. And is them going to their room in a situation like this the same as a timeout? And is it frowned upon? Like, should we not be sending them to their room? So I put up this reel.
Yeah.
This is just like an example of like the information overload and how everybody has a freaking opinion about everything.
Always.
I put up a reel explaining like the going to the room and, you know, is that gentle parenting? Like, da 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 da. The comments are wild. Like, everybody has a different opinion. Oh, just like every option that you could imagine. Like, oh yeah, like that does sound like gentle parenting to me. Like, and then somebody else was like, no, because you're basically saying when you're emotional or you have this emotion, like, I don't want to be around you. And I'm like, oh, that made me feel bad. But like, it's never ending. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do like whatever feels right for us in the moment. And I feel good that we were both super calm, gave him the options. He, you know, was still kind of in charge of his decisions. And it's like, okay, well, the consequence is you're going to stay in your room. So yeah. I was like, I don't know what to do in this situation.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I'm trying to think of like what I would do in a situation like that. Well, this is not the right thing, but I'll tell you, I would have just made him pasta with butter separately. And
See,
been like,
that's what I normally do. And I'm getting so
default.
like, then it's like I either feel guilty about setting this boundary of eating dinner, or I feel guilty about I'm like enabling his picky eating.
I know. It's tricky. It really is hard. Like, I'm just telling you what I know I would do in that situation.
Yeah.
It would have been like, here's your buttered noodles and eat up. Because I mean, what you just described is so very real in my life. I couldn't even think to give Jack lasagna because I know what he would like put his little tongue on it, like you said, and be like, that's gross. I'm done. Like,
yes,
buddy,
but it drives me crazy.
I know. And my son's like underweight. He's like right on the cusp of like
Milo's little too,
being like too skinny. Which, you know, is ridiculous because we have more than enough food and he's just whatever. He also has a fast metabolism, but still. I don't know if he would have said that. Even after that, we probably would have like talked through why. Is there one piece of it that you could eat? Do you think that maybe you could just eat the noodles if you don't care for the cheese and the sauce? You know, try to work through it that way. It's tricky. It's hard. And you know, on the internet, everyone's going to have an opinion about something. And it's always going to be something different. Like, you could literally put the most like innocuous thing out there. And like, everyone's going to just come. And I often think like, were people always this opinionated, or are they just like this now because there's a platform?
No, my mom never had anything. Like, she can't believe what parents go through now. And like what we have to deal with and like the information overload. She was like, all I had was your Auntie Carrie to be like, oh, my kids are doing this. So, you know, this is what I did. And she's like, oh, sweet. Like,
yeah,
good idea. Like, there was
that's
nothing.
What it was. That was it. I think my mom went to my grandmother. And that was it, because my mom only has brothers. So I think she went to my grandmother, and that was it. I could think of the only time that my mom said that anyone ever gave her a hard time, probably like ever in life, was my mom was divorced. Like I said, my parents got divorced when I was 2, and I went to Catholic school, and the priest, who was like the head of the parish, like kind of busted my mom's chops or like made her feel bad about being divorced. This was during the 80s. And that was probably like the only time that she ever had any sort of like backlash about parenting or anything like that. Like, how dare you choose to be a divorced woman? You know, like that was a bad idea. Like, that was not knowing any of the context or the situation or anything like that. I think that was one of the only times that my mom ever had any sort of like parenting advice thrown her way.
Can you imagine living life nowadays? Like, the majority of moms, like, it's very common now for both parents to be working outside the home, to have these full-fledged careers. while now also trying to raise a family. And then we have like the added layer of information overload, feeling judged all the time, like trying to worry about how to perfectly navigate every single situation with our children. Like imagine that whole layer of stress was just lifted.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
No, it's crazy. It is like, wow, that's exactly what it is. It's like, wow. I was actually, speaking of my mom, just 2 days ago, she and I were on the phone, and I don't even know how this story came up, but I was telling her a story about my grandmother that she didn't know. And so I'll share the story now because I feel like it actually sort of plays all together. My grandmother was in her 20s during World War II, and she had a good like government job, and it was also like working with the phone company. It was like, I don't know, half working with the phone company, half working with the government. I don't know. It was in communications during World War II. And she was so bright and so talented at her job that they had asked her to stay on full time after the war had ended. And at that point, they were letting the other women go. And they said, you know, you have talent. We see something in you. We would love for you to stay on. And unfortunately, my grandfather told her that she couldn't work and that she had to come home and raise a family, start a family at that point. And so she did. And you know, she went on to have my mom and her brothers. And I told my mom that, and she never knew that story because I had a very close relationship with my grandparents. I used to go to their house after school, and we would talk, and my grandmother would serve me dinner and stuff. And so my mom didn't know that story. And you know what she said? That's so sad, Tara, to think that there was a time where women who could have had a choice, you know, had a future, had to choose.
Yeah.
Or they didn't have to choose, really. The choice was made for them to stay home. And so it's interesting, you know, going back, thinking about being a default parent and traditional roles and all of those things.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't even a conversation to have the other parent be more involved, or, you know, that wasn't even a thing. It's like everybody had their clear role, and that was it.
And that was it. And at this point, she was not even a mother yet. I think she may have been married, but wasn't a mother.
Yeah.
Which is just wild to think that. And here my mom heard the story all those years later and had no idea.
And part of me thinks, like I was saying, my mom had 3 kids, you know, right after school, right before she was probably 25 or 28. I don't remember. Anyways, nowadays it's so different. And so many of us are having children in our 30s, late 30s even. And I do feel that that transition into motherhood is so much more jarring when you're older and you have lived 10, 15 years on your own as an independent adult. You get used to this life. You're so focused on yourself. Like you're able to do what you want when you want. You're focused on like goals. And then you get married, have a child, or just have a child. And it's so much more jarring because it is such a difference from the life that you have now become accustomed to living. I always used to think about that. Like I was like in school, focus, me, like doing all these things, traveling, like going to yoga whenever I want. And then you have a child and it's like, boom, your life is completely flipped.
Night and day difference.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it very much was. I felt ready when my son was born because we tried 3 years to have him. So had we not struggled with pregnancy loss and then subsequent infertility after that, I would have felt more what you're saying. Like I was a, let's say, 29-year-old living in New York City, had a great job. My husband was a resident at his hospital. And I would have felt that more jarringly, I think, but it took us 3 years to have our son. So by the time we finally got pregnant and I was able to carry him to term, I was like, oh, thank goodness. And I felt prepared because it
You
was
were like mentally there.
I was mentally there because it took us 3 years to get to that point. So I was like finally like so grateful and so elated to be there that I didn't necessarily feel that it was as jarring. But like I said, had we not had that journey, I'm sure I would have been like, what do you mean I can't go to Starbucks now? Or what do you mean like whatever this is? You know, I was just so happy that it worked. I think that was what it was. That's what it was. I was just so happy it worked. So happy that it happened. But that's not to say that the transition to becoming a mother was easy.
Easy peasy?
Not easy peasy. That's the one thing. It was not easy peasy because there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of, now you're someone's mom.
I still think that sometimes. Like Milo's 6 and I'm like, oh my God. Like I'm his mom.
Like who let me be a mom?
I'm somebody's mom. Like, this is my husband. Like, what?
Who let me be an adult? I often think about, you know, when you're a kid and you like look around and not your parents necessarily because you would see them every day, but like your aunts and uncles that maybe you would only see occasionally on holidays. And I often think back and be like, I'm like the age that my aunts and uncles were when I thought that they were so grown up.
So old, yeah.
So old, right? Does that make sense? Like
I think that all the time. Trust me, when I was in university, I was like, I'm an adult. I'm such, you know, a grown up. And now I drive through the Guelph University pretty often here. And I'm like, oh my God, these are children. But like when I was in university, I was a full-blown adult.
Yes. It's mind-blowing. Like when I see high school kids now, I feel like they look like babies. When I see college kids, I feel like they look like high school kids. I'm like all messed up.
Yes.
I mean, for me, I think I'm still 29 years old. So I don't know why I'm not, because I feel like I am.
Same. Sometimes I think I'm going to just take a course at the university just to like go live that life, you know, walk to class with my textbooks and I
don't even think they have textbooks anymore. I think everything's on the laptops now.
Oh, that's terrible.
No, but I think you could pass for a college kid, Renee. I really do.
Try.
No, you totally
If I wear, you know, like my sweats and don't put on a lot of makeup, usually I get ID'd quite a bit to buy alcohol. And I love when I do.
Oh, yeah. You're like, give it to me. Tell me.
Yeah.
Let me whip it out.
Yeah, exactly. And one time I couldn't find my ID. I still get nervous when I go in to like buy a bottle of wine or something. I get nervous because here it's not like in the States. We have specific stores that only sell alcohol. So you can't just go buy alcohol anywhere.
In New Jersey, it's the same way, actually. So we have liquor stores. You have to go to the liquor store. You have to go to the wine store. Yeah.
So there's like more of a seriousness about it. And I always get nervous because I'm like, Renee, you're almost 40. Like you're going to be 40. Okay. Like the drinking age here is 19. Like you're going to be fine. But every once in a while they ID me. And I'm still like nervous, like trying to get my ID out of my like purse. And one time I couldn't find it and I was panicking and I'm like going through all my cards because I just keep all my cards like in a pile in my little fanny pack. And the guy was looking at me and I'm like fumbling around. I'm like, oh I can't find it. And he's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, it's right there. Like it's at the back of the thing. And I was like, oh my God. Never coming back here again.
Oh my God, that's so funny and embarrassing. I went out to an emo show, like an emo punk show with a friend of mine, and she couldn't find her ID. I think she left it at home, which was actually bad because she drove. And that means that, anyway, she had to show them her like pharmacy card to prove her birth date.
That is funny.
Yeah. And like the funny thing is like, you know, she's clearly over 40. I wouldn't say clear. I mean, like we together, she and I are clearly over 40. And we had to get carded to go into this club and she didn't have it. But again, I think the bigger issue was that we drove there without it. But
That's okay.
But she had to use, well, that's all right. I'm saying it now.
Don't you have like 24 hours to show your license if you
I'm
get
sure
pulled
it's
over?
fine, right? This was months ago. Anyone listening to this that's going to call the cops. It was a very long time ago. We're fine.
They drove without their license.
Everything's cool. Everything's fine. But she did use her pharmacy card to get in, which is kind of crazy. So you're on the cusp of 40. What are your thoughts about that? You recently had, I say recently, and this is probably a while ago, you had a post about being 39.
Yeah. So I'll be 40 in March.
Happy birthday. What day?
March 7th.
Nice.
My husband's
I'm the
birthday.
23rd.
Oh, my husband's birthday is March 14th.
That's my husband's birthday.
No way.
Shut up, Renee.
So are you and your husband the same age?
We are. He's 9 days older than I am.
Okay, so I'm 2 weeks older than my husband. So we'll both be turning 40 at the same time. And I don't know what to do for our birthdays.
A big party. You have to have a big party. We were going to, and guess what happened on our 40th birthday month?
Quarantine.
Everything shut down on Sam's birthday.
Yes.
Yeah. You probably remember because it happened to pre.
Yes. And I defended my dissertation right like March 9th or something. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yes. So we had our birthdays in quarantine. Womp, 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 womp.
Wow, that's exciting.
Yeah, I guess so.
So that's my biggest, with regard to turning 40, I think I feel more pressure to be like, okay, I'm getting older. I want to start building muscle, like doing that kind of stuff, getting health stuff like organized and checked. I'm getting a colonoscopy in January. Like that's fun.
Smart. Good idea.
Celebratory event. But yeah, like trying to go to the gym now to build muscle because otherwise I'm just going to wither away. You know?
It's true. Like I have to tell you that I turned 40 and the pandemic hit simultaneously. And I like instantly got out of shape and I can't tell. And I still to this day can't tell whether it was turning 40 or the pandemic. And then like ever since then, and it's been 4 years now, but I'm actually more leaning towards it's turning 40 than the pandemic.
Yeah, things just like happen. And like my periods and my cycle was getting all wild and the symptoms from that. So in June, I started birth control to like keep my hormones level. That's been life changing.
Good to know.
Because I was like, why am I living like this? This is not fun. You know?
It's not. It's all over the place. It's a mess.
Yeah. So did that, feeling better, focusing on, eating more protein, going to the gym, want to gain a bunch of muscle. Mm-hmm. That's more so what I'm thinking about when it comes to turning 40. But then I'm also like, what are we going to do? We might just go to Vegas, like the two of us. We really like going to Vegas, going to dinners, going to a show. I still go to bed at like 10:30 in Vegas. Don't get me wrong.
Well, no, you know why you sort of have to? I mean, for us, like we went back in January and we went to bed super early because we were still on East Coast time and we never actually changed over from East Coast time the whole time.
Yeah. What'd you guys do there?
So my husband had a conference and Jack and I were his stowaways. And Jack and I, we had a great time. We saw Chris Angel. Which was a cool show, magic show, illusionist, if you will. We went to dinner. What else did we do?
Such good restaurants there.
Yeah. Oh, we saw BattleBots, which Jack was like so excited. So BattleBots are these robots that fight.
Is that a TV show?
It is a TV show.
Cool.
And they have this like, it's sort of like a mock taping of BattleBots. And that was his by far favorite thing.
Oh, that's cool. Milo would love that.
It was really, I highly recommend that because that was like very cool. And they have like I said, it's like a mock taping, but the kids are really into it. They don't know that it's not actually going to go air anywhere. And that was tons of fun. So BattleBots was very cool. Dinner was cool. We stayed at the Paris, which was fun. Yeah.
Nice.
Because that's where the conference was.
Yeah. Vegas is a good place to like, you go, great shopping, dinners, and shows. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's all I need to be content,
Yeah. That's it. No, I'm with you. And as Milo gets older, I mean, obviously he's little now, but he'll become your little travel buddy. Like Jack is my travel buddy. He's my ride or die. Now he's gotten old enough that when he's off on break, the two of us will go on trips. We
Yeah.
love Scottsdale, Arizona. We just like love that it's like warm. We love the vibe. And so Jack and I went together in February and had so much fun. Like to the point
So
where
what do
like
you do
he's still talking
there?
about it. Hiking.
Okay, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
They have
hiking.
good like restaurants and
They have good restaurants. There's some good shopping. They have an amazing zoo. I didn't know how good their zoo was until we went. And I was like blown away by the Phoenix Zoo. We were supposed to do something else that morning. And then like we needed more people to do what this event was. It was like an escape room. And we didn't have enough people to do the escape room. And I was like, there was only two of us. And they were like, yeah, we can't get in. I was like, oh, come on. So stupid. So we ended up going to the zoo and had an amazing time. And then there's like this other rock that you could, like a mountain that you could climb. And so then Jack went home telling everybody like, I climbed a mountain. So it was very cool. And there's a ghost town that's not that far from there. So we like Scottsdale. We've been there probably 5 times in the last like 5 years, or maybe
because we
like
were
a lot.
thinking about doing something like that, like one of these random places that we've never been, but that has really nice weather. So would that place have warm weather in March? Like it's always hot?
Yes.
Okay.
It is like in the 70s in March. Like it's beautiful. And March is like the perfect time to go.
Yeah, I remember going to LA in March and it was the nicest weather. It was just like how I described it was like room temperature.
Yes, that's
everywhere.
Exactly. That's what Scottsdale is like in February and March.
Yeah, like you're not hot, you're not cold, you're just perfect.
Yeah, it's a vibe. It's really one of my favorite spots. So
okay.
I'm excited for you to turn 40 and go on all of your adventures and all of that kind of stuff. I love it so much. I'm going to ask you one last question. Have you seen any good shows lately?
So we are currently watching, I wasn't going to watch it, but we're currently watching the Menendez Brothers show on Netflix. Did you see it?
I have not, but people are telling me to watch it.
Okay. So we're watching that. We're kind of in the middle of it, I would say. And I'm also all caught up on Love is Blind, the new Love is Blind show, waiting for the next episodes of that to come out. And I'm reading a book called Slewfoot. And it's about witches. It's like a witch kind of book. So I thought that was like October vibes, you know?
Yeah, that is October vibes. So speaking of witches, I'm currently
all
caught up. Oh my God, could you imagine?
You're like, speaking of witches, let me pull out my spell book.
No, it's close. No, it was a good segue because I'm currently caught up with Agatha All Along on Disney Plus. What
is that?
So I don't know if you like the Marvel universe, like the Marvel movies. Probably not, but that's okay.
Milo does.
Okay, Milo does. I love the Marvel universe. And so on Disney Plus, they have all of these different original television shows. There was like a Loki one. There was like a Captain America one. So this one is a spinoff of one called WandaVision, but it's called Agatha All Along. And it's all about witches.
Nice.
So there you go.
Did you see It Ends With Us?
I did not.
Oh, man. So we saw that not too long ago. Bawled my eyes out. I've never cried so hard in a movie in my life. At the theater.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, last night we saw The Wild Robot. Highly recommend.
Oh, I want to see that.
Run to see that movie. Run to see that movie. Speaking of bawling your eyes out, you'll bawl your eyes out. As a mother with a child, forget about it. Forget about it.
No.
I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, you're the second person that's told me that movie is amazing.
It's so good. Run, do not walk to go see The Wild Robot.
We gotta go.
Yeah.
We'll take Milo.
Yes. Oh yeah, it's like for Milo. It's
perfect. Yeah.
Like, you know what's funny? It's for Milo, but also bring your husband too, because like my husband was crying. Like we were a mess.
Yeah. My husband will have to drive home.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you guys are gonna be a mess. It's wonderful. It just has like a beautiful commentary on parenting and family and all of the things. It's so good. But Renee, tell everyone, where can we find you? Where can we listen to the pod?
Yes. Okay. So my podcast is called The Mom Room. We recently relaunched on October 1st, and it's just so fun. Thursday episodes are me and my sister. We just kind of yippity yap about parenting and motherhood and pop culture and all the things. And then Tuesdays are my interview episodes. The first one that we relaunched with on October 1st was Jillian Harris. And then Tara is the next one. So by the time this is out, that will already be out.
Yeah.
And the relaunch was all about just like having more fun with it and talking to people that I want to talk to and more of like conversations as opposed to structured interviews. So that's the podcast. And on Instagram, it's at the Mom Room. And then my personal account is at the Renee Reina.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I love what you were saying about restructuring it to be more fun, because that's what my plan is for my show too. Like,
yeah, I was like starting to get burnt out and I was like, I need to change it up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. So I haven't like officially redone anything yet, but my listeners can tell that I'm going to start to go into that direction. So it's not that I'm not going to still interview experts, because I love to learn just as much as everybody else does, but it's going to be a little bit more Tara than just like Tara asking questions.
Exactly.
Yeah. Love it. Renee, thanks so much for being here.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Modern Mom Probs. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive in today's problem with me, your host, Tara Clark. Join me next time when I'll be interviewing another great guest and tackling another modern mom problem. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review and a rating. As always, you could head over to Modern Mom Probs on Instagram and give me a follow, or check out my book, Modern Mom Probs, A Survival Guide for 21st Century Mothers, available online wherever books are sold. Well, that's it for today. See you next time, folks.